Deathclaws. Pre-war Black Ops engineered them, spliced from Jackson's chameleon DNA to serve as expendable shock troops with exposure to the FEV, an artificial virus that forced changes in both the genotype and phenotype of organic beings, along with the ease of modifying it for whatever purpose desired. Survival in the wasteland pushed them even further. That's why they track fast, hit harder than most super mutants, and adapt to almost any biome. Communities that try to settle near old labs or quarries usually learn that the hard way. Yao Guai. They're the wasteland's bears, mutated descendants of the North American black bear, named Yao Guai by Chinese-American internees before the war. Territorial, capable of forming protective bonds with cubs, and just present everywhere from the capital wasteland to Zion. You'll see them scrounging the same routes you do because their diet followed ours into the ruins. Radscorpions. Not just big scorpions. Burrowers that evolved around radiation-blasted flats and test ranges, reading vibration before you ever see a claw. Their biology is about ambush. The sand dive, the blind pop-up behind prey, the sting, built for rapid envenomation. That behavior is why so many roads across desert basins are just on. Cazadores. These didn't happen. Big MT built them. Dr. Barrows took tarantula hawk wasps, scaled them up, and let a nightmare out of the lab. The buzz you hear is the old facility's signature following you into daylight. Venom meant for field tests, wings that make caravans reroute to avoid nests, and a breeding pattern hardy enough to survive long after the think tank forgot process notes. Nightstalkers. Same lab, different splice. Coyotes and rattlesnakes meshed for stealth, speed, and a tendency to slip out of sight between rocks and sage. Their trails around Big MT's edges tell the whole story of old-world hubris. The think tank wanted interesting, and the Mojave got a permanent predator. Mirelurks. Queens, hunters, kings. Mirelurk is an umbrella. Regional mutations of coastal and benthic life that diverged hard after the bombs. In the Commonwealth, hunters are flat-out lobsters, adapted for charge attacks and acid spit. Kings are amphibious outliers with gills and lungs and a ranged sonic blast. Queens are the apex. Shoreline broodmothers with egg clutches and caustic spray that turns docks into kill zones. Local fishermen and Minutemen call them lobsters for a reason. Lakelurks. The Nevada branch of the family. Ambush predators that haunt reservoir edges and old lake beds, holding still until the last second, attack by using shrieking sonic pulse waves from afar to stun enemies, then rip them apart using their claws. They feel like statues until you move wrong. Anglers. Far Harbor's fog made a new kind of shoreline hunter. Anglers crouch under the pines and marsh shrubs with a bioluminescent lure, then spit incendiary blasts when you close. Amphibious, barnacle-armored, and patient. Fog crawlers. Crustaceans that outgrew the shore. The shell reads like armored geology, all plates and ridges, and they commit to straight-line bulldozes through brush. They are the result of long-term physiological changes in the wildlife induced by the radioactive phenomenon of the fog. A radioactive mass of cloud material that plagues Mount Desert Island. Gulpers. Think salamanders scaled up past common sense. Long bodies, long lunge, semi-aquatic habits. They patrol creek draws in low fog, not to duel but to overwhelm. Hit, coil, drag. Old trawler captains around the island swear they saw smaller versions right after the bombs, and then a growth spurt once the fog settled in. Grafton Monsters. A cryptid in West Virginia folklore, but Fallout's version is a lab story. West Tech's FEV work in Appalachia twisted a human subject into a head-tucked slab of muscle and caustic sludge throws. You don't find them near clean water, you find them where industry and experiments meet. Wendigos. The 76-era files are ugly. Starvation, cannibalism, isolation, then radiation came and the rest after. Flesh sloughs away until there's only speed, reach, and the kind of hunger that clears entire farmsteads. Variants exist, and the bigger ones broadcast their presence long before you see the hands on the floor. Snallygasters. Files point to recombinant FEV at the West Tech site near Huntersville. The result, four-legged, long-tongued acid spitters that read like proof of concept for combining traits across species and then accidentally setting them loose. When people in the Toxic Valley say it came from the lab, they're referring to this exact pipeline. Radroaches. Baseline post-war insect story. American cockroaches got bigger, meaner, and path-dependent on our trash. They don't terrify anyone at level 20. But open any sealed room in an old plant or metro tunnel, and you'll see why humanity started calling every irradiated pest rad something. Bloatflies and bloodbugs. Two branches of the same problem. blowflies swollen into slow hoverers that pester you forever, and mosquitoes expanded into fast hematophages that try to latch on. If there's standing water, they're there. If someone's dumping barrels, they move in like settlers. Stingwings. Scorpion flies that put on weight and speed after the Great War. Known to build large clusters of nests on the ground and walls, with nests themselves oozing a bright yellow sap, they often show up in mixed groups. Mutations that survive in Appalachia usually survive by swarming or stacking with something else. Cave crickets. They started as exactly what the name says, then Appalachia's conditions did the rest. Tough exoskeletons, nasty mandibles, and a presence in mines and collapsed towns that makes every echo suspect. Radstags. Two-headed cervids from the Commonwealth to the Mire. Skittish as herds, ugly as a cornered buck. Hunters like them because they're consistent protein and leather. Field notes like them because the antler malformations tell you a lot about local radiation patterns over time. Mutant Hounds. Dogs warped by FEV into heavy fast shock units for super mutant packs. In the East especially, they read like living breaching tools. Charge, pin, howl to pull the gun line forward. Every entry about them in field logs shares the same header. Where there's a hound, there's a warband. Geckos. The Mojave's smaller lizards got their own growth curve. Sun-drunk, fast, and prone to swarming camp edges and stream beds. Golden and fire variants are just the setting, writing itself on their skin. Heat, minerals, time. New Vegas pushed their range into legend because they're exactly what you expect on the other side of a ruined highway sign. Tunnelers. Lonesome Road made them famous and kept them mysterious. The Divide's detonations opened deep places. Something adapted down there and came up built for burrowing, bioluminescent spotting, and pack hunts under sand. Whatever they were before, every sign now points to subterranean specialists that thrive where people crack the ground. Bighorners, coyotes, wolves, and Brahmin. The background of the West. Bighorners are swollen bighorn sheep that herders still argue over. Coyotes stayed closer to baseline in the Mojave and fill the same small pack niches. Wolves in 76 show what the fog and fallout do to a smart predator. And Brahmin, 2 heads, 2 stomachs, the backbone of every caravan. The fact that people still breed, herd, and sell them says more about wasteland economics than any terminal could. Scorchbeasts. Engineered by chance rather than design, Scorchbeasts are bat-like ultrasight mutated organisms first unleashed from deep mines in Appalachia. Their defining traits aren't just wings and sonar. They broadcast powerful ultrasonic bursts, and more importantly, vector the scorched plague that bent entire factions to their will. Their queen is the apotheosis of this mutation cycle, and the screech isn't flavor. It's a weaponized shockwave tied to echolocation. Megasloths. A melancholy relic of Appalachia, Megasloths are heavily mutated descendants of pre-war sloths. They kept the long arms and slow gait, scaled up to a hulking frame that thrives in the forest biomes around 2010-2 to 2010-3. Lore paints them as largely non-aggressive browsers transformed by ambient radiation and the region's stew of mutagens, which tracks with their placid behavior until provoked. Radtoads. Radtoads are exactly what they sound like. Oversized toads warped by the wasteland. Their signature is that long, whip-like tongue and egg clusters they eject as proximity mines. Later sources also describe poison clouds and ambush behavior. They're a pure Appalachia after the bombs mutation. Simple organism, big body, exaggerated amphibian traits. Hermit crabs. Far Harbor's hermit crabs didn't just grow, they rethought shells. Too big for any gastropod home, they squat inside wrecked vehicles, buses, vans, and use them as mobile armor and ambush blinds. The creature itself still reads as a crab, exposed abdomen tucked under a hardcover, claws telegraphing the charge. But the post-war innovation is the chassis, an entire car as a shell. Honeybeasts. Honeybeasts are massively mutated honeybees. The hive on the back is part of the creature and it spawns defending bee swarms. Fallout 76 positions them as territorial, walking beehives, a byproduct of radiation and uncontrolled ecological pressure rather than a lab project. The swarm mechanic in-world mirrors the lore idea. You're fighting the colony more than the host. Floaters. Classic series oddities reintroduced in 76. Floaters in Appalachia are tied to West Tech's FEV experimentation, which explains their unnatural physiology and variant elements. Flamers, fire, freezers, cryogenic, and gnashers, acid taught close quarters, aren't separate species. They're divergent results of the same tampering, color, behavior, and attack type track to each variant. Bloodworms. Nuka World's sand-burrowing predators are an ecosystem glitch. Post-war invertebrates scaled up and made aggressive by the region's hazards. The lore leans on ambush behavior. Surface ripples, sudden spit, then a rush, which fits the desert theme park biomes. Giant ants. A scientist, Dr. Lesko, tinkers with ants until the line develops fire-spitting variants and a queen driving the outbreak under Greyditch. They're an object lesson in how many mutants aren't just radiation accidents. They're research projects that got out. Later games keep the family alive as a regional staple. Giant mantises. Unlike the ants, Mojave mantises trace to Vault 22's crop experiments. Horticulture with a side effect of oversized arthropods that escaped into the desert in Zion Canyon. Lore notes they're closer to baseline insects than many mutants. The main change is scale, and the tendency to swarm, which lines up with Vault 22's broader nature overgrows the lab storyline. Centaurs. Centaurs are inseparable from super mutants, an FEV byproduct made from human biological slurry, grown into watchdogs and shock troops. On the East Coast, they're linked to Vault 87's program alongside the Capital Wasteland mutants. Their biology, multiple heads, tongues, and a crawling quadruped posture, sells the FEV gone wrong aesthetic better than almost anything else. Ticks. A distinctly Appalachian nuisance, enlarged black-legged ticks, Ixodes scapularis, that mutated after the war. They show up wherever brush and game are thick, latch fast, and in 76 their blood sacs can fill and spray radiation. If you kill them while bloated, the sacs burst and you lose the blood sac drop. As lore, they're straightforward. Native parasite plus radiation equals oversized vector, and they tell you plenty about the region's ecological collapse. Spore carriers. Vault 22's tragedy in one creature. Reanimated human hosts colonized by the mutated fungus Bovaria mordicana. The Vault's agricultural mission spiraled into a green overrun, with spores converting residents into shambling carriers that spread the bloom. New Vegas and Zion treat them as a contained, but haunting, footnote in the Science Tried to Fix Hunger arc, mole rats. From the classics to the modern games, mole rats are a series constant. Oversized burrowers that surface in packs and compete with pig rats and giant rats in early West Coast titles, then reappear across the East. They're radiologically enlarged rodents, sometimes used in labs or vault experiments, and a reminder that the mundane creatures suffered mutations too. Super mutants and behemoths. Every region's super mutants share one root: forced evolutionary virus exposure. The source of that exposure varies. Vault 87's evolutionary experimentation program on the Capital Wasteland, Institute VATS in the Commonwealth, and West Tech's contaminated water scandal in Huntersville for Appalachia. But the end state is consistent: sterile, radiation-tolerant, hyper-strong humanoids. Behemoths are the extreme end of that curve. Super mutants that have continued to grow, mentally regressed, and become siege engines with boulders. Feral ghouls, glowing ones. Ghouls begin as irradiated humans, long-lived, necrotic, and often still sentient. Feral ghouls are what happens when time and trauma strip that away. Glowing ones are an especially irradiated subset whose bodies emit dangerous bursts and can rouse nearby ferals, a behavior that turns small skirmishes into pylons if you don't break the hub. The social part matters too. Prejudice against non-ferals is a through line across the series. Gatorclaws, Nuka World. Created under Nuka World's Safari adventure by Dr. Darren McDermott, Gatorclaws weren't found, they were made. A genetic blend of American alligator and Jackson's chameleon DNA, with super mutant neural material run through the park's cloning hardware. The holotapes and quest chain walk you through the disaster. Prototypes turned on their creator, the replicator ran unchecked, and the zone filled with a species purpose-built for aggression. Mole miners. These were people, Appalachian miners warped by exposure and time, then effectively entombed in their mining suits as the mutation overtook them. The suits became carapace. Their society collapsed into bands haunting old works, which is why they carry black titanium-rich salvage and repurposed tools. In 76, they're one of the clearest cases of human-to-creature transformation without an intervening lab, Wanamingos. Fallout 2's infamous cavern dwellers are best described by what we don't know. They appeared suddenly around Redding's Great Wanamingo Mine before 2241, with slick hides, sucker arms, and resistance profiles that made them feel alien, yet official sources leave the origin ambiguous. Fan theories point to FEV experimentation. Canon stops short of confirming it. Either way, they're a West Coast memory that later titles mostly left behind.